Clown world is something that we're all very familiar with by now. We've all been living it for years and years and years. You understand what I mean when I say clown world?
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, it's such a ridiculous term, but it's just too true to not use because you just can't escape it. No matter where you turn, no matter where you look, clown world is everywhere, manifesting in every aspect of day-to-day life that we encounter. And as part of that, you should all go check out this recent premium live hangout that Carl did on cultural colonization, talking about how all of this stuff has come over here from foreign cultures, foreign countries, from France, from America, plenty of places. None of it's particularly British, as far as I can tell, and now it's starting to colonize our folktales, our culture, our media. So, for instance, you've got the Robin Hood adaptation that's coming out soon, where Robin Hood is going to be an independent, strong, young black girl, which is a very interesting interpretation of an old English folk tale. But
isn't that racist, having a young black girl being a criminal and robbing people? I would class that as racist.
Perhaps you do a good point, but the stereotypes are fine when they do them. So there you go. It's all right, but you should check that out if you're interested. It's very, very good content. But let's get further into this now. So recently, it has been announced through certain leaks that have been made. I saw you post about this on Twitter as well, actually, that the RAF, the Royal Air Force, is seeming to pause job offers for white men as they try to meet impossible diversity targets. And if we go to the next link, we've got the article talking about it a little bit more. The head of RAF recruitment resigned in protest at an effective pause on offering jobs to white male recruits in favour of women and ethnic minorities, defence sources have claimed. The senior female officer apparently handed in her notice in recent days amid concerns that any such restrictions on hiring, however temporary and limited, could undermine the fighting strength of the Royal Air Force. I mean, that should be pretty obvious that something like that would happen. I mean, it's more than just the potential decrease in the skill of the fighting forces. At the end of the day, generally speaking, English people defending England, English people historically are white. So if you're going to be aiming to get people who aren't white, you're going to be getting people from different cultural and ethnic and historical backgrounds, making me question, what connection do they have to this land if they're going to be protecting it? How far will they go to protect this place if it actually came to it? Let's be honest.
Yep. 2 quick points. The first point is, well done to that female officer for resigning. That's what you call a patriot. She's given her job up and resigned and will take a financial hit now because she's decided this policy will damage the country she loves. That's what you call a patriot. And then we're trying to get more, anyone can apply to join the RAF. There is no colour bar. It is open as it possibly can be, but some people don't want to join. And there's many reasons why people don't want to join. So if we're looking at newly arrived immigrants and their children, let's be perfectly honest, they've already abandoned their country to come here. So patriotism and love of the country isn't a trait that's high up on their list because they've already proved that they hadn't for their own ancestral homelands. And that's not a criticism of them. I'm just saying it's a matter of fact. But what we're doing now is we're looking at what we can do to make the RAF represent the nation as a whole. Who cares? Do we look at a basketball team that's all black and do we say that doesn't represent the country as a whole? No, we don't, because what I want and what I've always wanted is the best person for the job.
Of course. Well, meritocracy, once again, is something that I think most people on some base level do aspire towards. They want to believe that the people who are in positions of importance or positions of power are the best for the job. And when it's meritocracy that leads to the diversity, so to speak, getting in those positions, then they're all for it. But as soon as it turns out maybe English people, white English people, are the ones most applying for positions where they are going to defend England, then all of a sudden it's a big problem.
And do we have a quota in the NHS for doctors? Because from what I remember, what I'm reading on medical doctors in the NHS, I think it's something like 48, 49% BAME, so black or Asian.
I would imagine a lot of that is, say, Indian people.
Yeah. And if you look at non-medical staff in the NHS, it's something like 55, 60%. So are we going to look at that and say to these people, you don't keep that job now because we now need to get a white person there? And we shouldn't do that. It's wrong, and it's wrong here. It's It's as you said, clown world.
Yeah.
Where does this stop?
I mean, with the NHS, I would question how those people got those jobs in the first place, given that like every single trust in the UK for the NHS has a big diversity and diversity and equity department where the people are getting paid ridiculously exorbitant amounts so that they can go around all of the trusts and say not enough BAME, not enough black people, not enough brown people. So I'd be questioning how those people got those jobs.
But don't forget, the NHS has got vacancies and has done for 30 years in every single department in every single hospital. So it's not like they pushed black and Asian people into these roles and didn't take white people, because there's vacancies everywhere. They're crying out for more staff to come work for the NHS, but people don't want to, because who wants to work for the NHS?
But yes, continuing on from this, so the person who came out and sort of blew the whistle on this said that the service was attempting to hit impossible diversity targets. The defence sources accused Air Chief Marshal Sir Mike Wigston, the head of the RAF, of appearing willing to compromise UK security at a time of growing threats from Russia and China in pursuit of albeit important goals such as the improving of diversity and inclusion. So Sky News, unsurprisingly, capitulating there, just going, well, you know, it might be compromising security, but we do need to admit that this is albeit very important stuff to make ourselves feel better through virtue signalling, the sorts of things that always ends well, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think Air Chief Marshal Sir Mike Wigston needs sacking.
I think a lot of people need sacking.
All these stories, when it comes to public services, we always have a go at the people who run these public services, and we have a go at the civil servants, and we have a go at the staff in there, and we have a go at their diversity departments. But who we always forget about is the government. They all work for the government.
Oh, I never forget that it's the government, I'll tell you that.
And we need to be saying to the government, this is wrong and we're sick of this. What are you doing at the wheel?
Well, would you like to hear about what the two potential leaders of the government have said about this? So, primarily, it was Rishi Sunak, a spokesperson for his campaign, said the only thing that should matter in recruitment is the content of your character, not your sex or the colour of your skin. That the Ministry of Defence would allow Britain's security to potentially be put at risk by a drive for so-called diversity is not only disgraceful, it is dangerous. And, you know, I think those are all very pretty words. I think those are fantastic rote talking points that he's bringing out there, but I don't believe that he's actually going to do anything about it.
If he was going to do something, the final line would have been, and if I become Prime Minister, I'll sack any head of department who promotes any of this stuff. In the Air Force, the Army, Civil Service, I'll sack them. That's how we should have ended it.
He's not going to do that, though, because as far as I consider it, the Conservatives in the Conservative Party, especially those in the leadership race, they when they're on the campaigns, when they're talking to the public, when they want you to vote for them, and that includes the Conservative Party members, they will talk like Conservatives, but they will rule like socialists.
Every politician always, no matter who the politician is, politicians always tell you what you want to hear.
Oh, yeah.
That's the job of a politician.
So, yeah, once again, I put no stock in any of the words that these people are putting out. And the RAF, to be fair, have disputed the allegations. They've said there's no pause in Royal Air Force recruitment and no new policy with regards to meeting in-year recruitment requirements. The Royal Air Force commanders will not shy away from the challenges we face building a service that attracts and recruits talent from every part of the UK workforce. But then they carry on to say, as with the Royal Navy and British Army, we're doing everything we can to encourage recruiting from underrepresented groups and ensure we have a diverse workforce. So what they've said there is, we're not doing it, but also we are doing it. Yeah. We're not going to outright say, yes, we're preventing white people, but by focusing on recruiting from underrepresented groups, I feel like they're going to be neglecting other people who are going to be potentially employed. So
what I've read there really is, we have no official policy or emails on this, but I spoke into a couple of officers' ears and said, stop taking on white men because you're affecting our table of looking at diversity.
Yeah, of course.
And that's how things work in these big corporations. It's not always an official email with a government stamp on it. It's
an informal thing, isn't it?
Stop doing that, because at the end of the year, this isn't going to look good. Not going to look good for you. It won't look good for your career.
Yep. Always passing favours. Yeah. But yeah, so that's how that's going. And Admiral Sir Tony Radakin head of the armed forces, used his first public speech in last December to stress the importance of striving for better diversity. So it's everywhere in this whole thing. He says, it was not about wokefulness, it's about woefulness. The woefulness of too few women, the woefulness of not reflecting the ethnic, religious, and cognitive diversity of our nation. And what an absolute joke to hear something like that. If I look at armed forces, and if I saw nothing but strong young white men, I wouldn't go, oh no, where's all the women? I would go, oh good, we're protected. That's what I would think, as long as I know that these people have been put in those positions through merit, for instance.
When the war with China comes, and it will come, not Russia. Russia is a nobody. Russia's shown the world they're a nobody, apart from to their weak neighbours. But Russia's not a threat to the West. China. When the war comes with China, and, we're sending our armed forces over there, and we've got 50% women, and we've got so many, BAME, and we've got so many black, and we've got so many gays, and none of them can fight. And they're all crying because I broke my nail or I've tripped up. And am I allowed to shoot an enemy soldier who's black? Well, you can do, but that doesn't count on your score. In fact, don't kill too many, because you can't be killing black soldiers who are enemies. You've got to be killing only white ones.
I'd be surprised if China was recruiting black soldiers.
They're taking over most of Africa.
No, that's true.
And when the war comes, you never know. But I mean, when war comes, you need an army with so many psychopaths in it and so many highly trained soldiers. And it doesn't matter who they are, because that's how you win a war.
Well, I'm not so sure that war with China would necessarily be coming, especially after Josh and I have been covering a bit recently in like contemplations and other such things we've been doing, talking about the disastrous state of China's economy more than anything. The question would be for me whether China could even afford to really go to war.
And that's why they'll go to war. Because if their economy is crumbling, then they're looking at civil unrest. China has had a lot of civil unrest over the centuries and millennia. And what every dictator does to keep power is you need an enemy. You need to invade somewhere else. You need your population focused on someone else. Because if they're not, they're focused on me.
Well, that is all true, but I just don't know whether if China did attempt to make any massive moves like that, especially towards the West, I don't know if their infrastructure would be able to handle it, or if it would just
not at the moment. It'd be salami tactics. First of all, they'll take Taiwan, then they'll take Vietnam, then they might take Japan, and they'll take some. But eventually, they'll run out of Asia. Then they'll be strong. They'll have natural resources. They'll have a bigger army. Where are they going to look then? Don't forget, China was humiliated by the West, especially the British, for centuries. We made most of their we made a lot of their population heroin addicts. So the British Empire could make money on it. They've been humiliated, and that's in their history. And I think if they do slimy tactics and get to that stage, there's only one way to go, and it's always west.
Well, potentially.
Who knows?
Either way,
I
do absolutely agree that national defence is of the utmost importance, and this is not putting our own national defence as the top priority. It's putting the current agenda, it's putting the current trends above national security, which should be very important for everybody who, for instance, lives here, including those who maybe don't have an attachment to this place, but as long as you're occupying it as a geographical space, you probably should care about your safety and well-being while you're here. But this is something that's also happening over in America as well. This isn't necessarily with their armed forces. Are you aware of Chris Ruffo?
No.
He's a fantastic activist. He's helped with people like Ron DeSantis exposing critical race theory in schools, and he does focus a lot on what's going on with children in the schools, because obviously, that's how you get them. You get them when they're young. That's how you indoctrinate them. And over in Minneapolis, he's exposed that the teachers' union over there has negotiated a contract in which the district will fire white teachers first, and that this is the inevitable endpoint of equity, which is absolutely true. And we can see a little bit from here. where it says, starting with spring 2023 budget tie-out cycle, if accessing, which means just removing, a teacher who is a member of a population underrepresented among licensed teachers in the site, the district shall access the next least senior teacher who is not a member of an underrepresented population. So just get rid of the white people first, basically. If you go to the next article over, there we go, it's just written down in here. So just get rid of the teachers. And the really strange thing for me is that the teachers' unions over in America especially are very responsible for protecting all of the teachers who, say, libs of TikTok and other such people are exposing. And a lot of the teachers' unions, they're very happy to go ahead with all of this wokeness. So these white teachers are probably more than happy to fall on their swords on behalf of their black and minority ethnic compadres, their brethren in the teaching thing. So that, you know, as long as you get another insufferably woke person in to teach my kids, because of course these teachers all consider it to be my kids, not kids who I am teaching. These are my kids. They belong to the state. They don't belong to their own parents. So you know, I think just break up these unions personally. They're destroying education.
This must be illegal under American law.
Well, I would imagine that it is only in one direction, though. Affirmative action laws in the US since the Civil Rights Act have always been very one-sided.
I forgot about that, affirmative action.
Yeah, I think some describe the Civil Rights Act from, what was it, 64? 64, 66, as the new constitution of the United States. And honestly, given that other than a few decisions made recently by the Supreme Court, most laws in the US, as far as I see, seem to be far, far more interested in protecting the sanctity of what was set down in the Civil Rights Act than the Constitution.
Well, let's wait for these white teachers to start getting sacked, and then let's see how these white progressive teachers react to that, because I can guarantee they won't like it.
No, they probably will say that they like it. They'll talk about how it's a great honour for them to be able to lay down their careers for the sake of marginalised
I don't think you'll find one saying that.
No, I think you'll find them saying that, but what they'll be thinking is, oh God, how am I going to put food on the table now?
I don't even think they'll be saying that. I think what they'll be saying is, this is unfair and I'm going to sue.
Potentially,
because
I suppose.
It's easy being woke when it doesn't affect you. The second it affects you, I mean, lose your job. I mean, that is affecting you.
Oh, massively so.
No, they won't like it, and then we'll see what they're saying. Do then.
Yeah, I mean, they also point out that they're doing this so that they can, you know, as with everything else, we need to rectify the past problems that have been caused to people of this community by the district, yada, yada, yada. And whenever I see that sort of stuff, I go, okay, if there was terrible treatment to people based on, you know, immutable characteristics, you know, I'm not a fan of people doing that sort of stuff just arbitrarily for the sake of it. Okay, if that's the problem, then go after the people who did that. Don't just go firing random white teachers just for the sake of reparations. That makes no sense to me. But then again, it's not supposed to make sense at the end of the day. It's supposed to be a force tactic, a power play to show you who's in charge and who gets to call the shots.
Well, can you imagine a meeting where this was discussed? Who would say no to this in that meeting? You would have to be a very brave person to say, this is wrong. So everyone's just gone.
Yep. I mean, speaking of China, you'd be involved in a complete struggle session right there. They'd break out the dunce hat for you. And we've got more stuff. We've got the Crown Paints advert. Crown Paints being a brand of paint that we have over here in the UK, putting out an advert that was dubbed misogynistic and massively offensive over a song featuring a man and a woman's relationship, where the song states, now a baby's coming and they don't know what it is. Hannah's hoping for a girl. Dave's just hoping that it's his. It's a bit cheeky. It's kind of you know, just old-fashioned homely humour as far as I'm concerned.
I'm quite funny, but I'm quite shocked that they did it.
I know. I'm shocked that a company in the modern UK actually went ahead and tried something like this. Yeah. But then we had female comedian. I know, contradiction in terms, but I'll just carry on. Yeah. We'll take it seriously anyway. Jenny Eclair wrote on Twitter, I'm watching the Crown Paint baby coming ad, and I can't be on my own thinking it's beyond mad. I find this massively offensive. And now, as a result of this and more than 100 complaints about the ad, the Advertising Standards Agency is talking about and currently assessing carefully to determine whether there are grounds for an investigation. So, this cheeky little fun song thrown into a paint advert, some female comedian, and over 100 people write in to complain, we might have to put an investigation forward. How stupid.
I know a bit more about this than you may imagine. I'm writing my third book at the moment on feminism.
Oh,
and one of the chapters, I forgot what the chapter's about now, but I've been looking into this. So there's research now from Germany that 10%, roughly about 10% of fathers in Germany who think that child's his, it isn't his. 10% in Germany. In France, because the number got so high, it's now illegal in France to DNA test your child without your mother's consent.
Really? So that's just protecting women from consequences of their actions there. Okay, very interesting.
There's been some British studies, and they're saying in Britain it could be up to as much as 20% of men are raising a child that isn't theirs.
I assume without their knowledge.
I mean, yeah. No, I'm not about step parents. I'm talking about they think that child's theirs. And it only gets found out, and the reason why they've done these researches in certain hospitals is the child's had an operation, the dad's had an operation. So they've got samples, they've got tissue samples.
And they can see.
And it's all done blindly, so they never tell the parents, but they've done these tests and they've worked out, they reckon, suspect maybe 20% of British men are raising a child that's not theirs.
God, that's just awful. That's horrifying to hear, to be perfectly honest, because I don't know, as a man, the one thing that you really want to do is have your children and raise them how you want, pass on your bloodline, pass on your genes, etc. And it's so deceptive and awful, but just a product of modernity, as far as I'm concerned, sadly, where you've got no accountability, no responsibility for people's own actions. Women are actively encouraged to go out and be whores, let's be perfectly honest. And then, when the inevitable consequences come as a result of that, you basically get the state and other apparatus around there protecting them from the consequences of their own actions. Because I'm sorry, if you've cheated on your significant other and basically subterfuge got them to raise a child that isn't their own, that man has no responsibility to look after you or that child, as horrible as that could sound, especially on behalf of the child. But, woman should have thought that.
The worst place for this to happen to is America.
Oh, really?
Even if in court, if you can prove that child's not yours in court, in most states, it doesn't matter. You thought you were your child's father, therefore you will pay alimony for the next 18 years.
Pure absurdity.
Yep.
Pure absurdity.
So maybe Crown Paints have done as a public service by raising this, because I bet nobody knew what I just said then.
No, Crown Paint's actually doing some good service, public service announcements right there, just maybe getting people to think a little bit more. Maybe you should keep an eye on your significant other's DMs. Don't be intrusive or anything, but just be a bit suspicious sometimes. Not anyway, moving on to a little bit more. So Ezra Miller, are you aware of Ezra Miller?
He's the Marvel nutcase who's gone off the plot.
Yeah, DC Nutcase. I've been keeping up track with him, and he is a prime example of clown world as it stands right now. The man identifies as non-binary, which just gives him a shield to be able to say, no, you can't do anything to me because I'm they, them, actually. He's been arrested multiple times, including for assaulting women in Hawaii. He has threatened people. He's basically groomed a child. And
he's a millionaire, I take it.
Of course he is. He's the Flash in the DC movies, so he's getting paid ridiculous amounts. And he's just completely off the rails, but he's broken his silence. After the only other time he broke his silence was when he went on the run from a restraining order that somebody's family put on him because he was grooming an a child turned teenager and then 18-year-old. When he said that he was no longer in our universe and didn't identify as a human being anymore, which I've pointed out before, then your human rights don't count in that case. But he's broken his silence finally, so he can apologize to everybody that he's alarmed. And yes, I would say, in the lightest terms possible, your actions are completely alarming, Ezra. But this is a brilliant trick. This is one of those.
He wants his job back.
Oh, of course. Well,
that's what
I
he's
don't think
doing.
they've even stopped him from being able to be in the next Flash film or anything like that.
He's trying to save his career now.
He's trying
Someone
to save
said,
his
you
career.
need to apologize. I don't mean it. I don't care. Just say this.
Yeah. Well, I find it startling that the man has not been put in prison yet, or at least arrested and put in jail. I mean, I know the man's got money for bail, but it's still absolutely ridiculous. He's been able to get away with everything that he has for so long. And then he just gets to apologize. we'll see if any other consequences come to him, because as far as I'm concerned, this is a fantastic trick that he's pulling. Lawyers hate this trick, Just apologise. Groomed a child, apologise. Beat a woman, apologise. As long as you've got a protected class or a protected identity, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Who
this
cares?
is a good example of the only privilege that really does exist, and it's money privilege. Because when you've got his sort of money, the normal rules of society don't apply to you because money talks.
Well, I think he does have two privileges. He's got the money, but then he's also got this stupid non-binary identity that he packages along as well, which provides him with a weapon, a bludgeon to hit people with. For instance, those video clips of when he was getting arrested by the police and they were shouting, and he was shouting like, "You can't call me him, you're using my wrong pronouns, it's actually they, them. Okay, I'm sorry about that, sir." And then he's like, "I'm going to throw a civil lawsuit at your way." And the fact of the matter is, anti-discrimination laws probably would let him get somewhere in a lawsuit if he were to throw that sort of accusation there, just because he's saying, "I'm not a man. I'm something else. I'm something completely separate from that." It's
I'm a criminal.
Awful. Yeah, he's a criminal. You can identify that way if you want, Ezra. No one's going to disagree with you there. We also had Graham Souness, who made some recent comments calling football a man's game, which got some controversy on social media. And to be fair to him, this is pretty good when he was saying, it's a man's game all of a sudden again. I think he was saying this in reference to a football match that he was watching and commenting on. "I think we've got our football back as I would enjoy football, men at it, blow for blow, and the referee letting them get on with it." In a statement through Sky, he said, "To clarify my comments from yesterday, I was referring to 2 Premier League matches I watched live on Sunday afternoon, rather than the sport of football. Football is a game for everyone to enjoy." Asked earlier on TalkSport if he regretted his comments, he replied, "Not a word of it." And why should he? Why should he regret
Football
his
is a man's game.
Yeah.
It was invented by men to be played by men.
In fact, if you go to the next link, Carl and I did a weekend segment recently. Great screenshot there for my face, Michael. Thank you. Where we're talking about the Lionesses versus the boys. And this is not necessarily to denigrate the women's football team, who, of course, recently won, I think it was the UEFA Cup, was it? And, fantastic, bringing it home for England, even if it is just the women's team. That's still a fantastic achievement. But we were talking about how them and quite a few of the other leading women's football teams across the world keep getting beaten by
teenage boys.
Yeah. So it's a man's game, but it also seems to be a boys' game as well. And the girls, fantastic for them to be able to, win something for England, but they can't keep up with teenage boys, let alone men.
It's because it's a different game, just like tennis. You have women's tennis, which is a completely different game to men's tennis. We don't let male boxers and female boxers fight. And same with football. Women's football is almost a completely different game to the way men play football. So when you're watching men's football, that's a man's game.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the interesting thing is that I think John told us while we were doing this, was that I don't know about boxing. I imagine it's probably in place for boxing. But for football, there's no divisions in any of the rules preventing women from performing in the men's leagues.
No.
It's just the fact that they can't. Because on terms of merit, they aren't good enough.
You'll find that in almost all sports.
Yeah, that's why we make women's leagues. It's not because we want to keep the women out. It's because otherwise the women couldn't compete.
Yeah.
Which just says it all, really. But and the final thing I just wanted to point out is that is your most recent Substack article that I'm aware of, talking about the cuckolding of the English man. I think if you want to explain a little bit of this, just so you can point people to your Substack, because I read this and I thought it was a very good article.
Yeah, so it's one of those questions I've been thinking about for quite a while, as in, what the hell has happened to English men? Look at the state of the country, look what's going on, look at the woke nonsense, look at our police force, look at the army, and I'm looking at everything thinking, what's gone on? So then I did a bit of research and I was looking into it. And, we need to remember that English men conquered the world 200 years ago. Biggest empire ever. And we conquered the world. English men stormed the beaches of Normandy and saved the whole continent from Nazi tyranny. That's who English men used to be. But we're not that anymore now. If we had real English men at home with their families, do you think we'd have grooming gangs raping tens of thousands of children if we had real men at home? Do you think we'd have trans women using female spaces if we had real Englishmen protecting their daughters and their wives, we'd have none of these problems. Do you think we'd have 1,000 or 20,000 illegal immigrants storming our beaches every year now for 3-4 years? If we had real Englishmen in government, in the armed forces, in the lifeboats, if we had them, real Englishmen of only a few decades ago, 50, 60 years ago, most of our problems would be gone. But something's happened, and I sort of go through what's happened. The first thing really is, it started with feminism. So feminism said to men, you're no good, we don't need you, you're evil, all the problems of the world are yours. And we wonder why some men go, all right, well, I'll be a woman. And we wonder why, we have thousands of men killing themselves every year, because every message they get is negative. You're evil, you're an abuser, there's no place for you in the world anymore. So that's feminism. Then we start looking at political correctness. Englishmen made a mistake there. They started shutting up and not pushing back, and that sealed their own fate.
Yeah, I don't want to put too much blame on the previous generations and trying to absolve, millennials and Gen Z from anything. But my generation and the generation immediately after are more the symptoms rather than the cause of the disease. Because at some point in the 1960s, 1970s, like you say, for some reason, men just let all this wash over them. They were just like, oh, feminists say I'm evil. Yeah, probably. They just...
Not all men.
Not all men, no.
So this what I'm talking about now is a gradual approach. So feminism by itself didn't destroy men. It destroyed some men, and they became weak men. But then, same with political correctness. There's things as a man now I want to say, but I daren't, so I better be quiet. We set the stage for the kids and young people we have now. This has been a slow process over 60, 70 years, since the Second World War and since the creation of the welfare state. So since a man didn't have to be a man anymore because the state would look after him, that's quite tempting. When I don't want to do hard work, I'll just lean off the state. When single mums got so much power and the government paid them to be single mums, I don't need a father in the house anymore now. So you get out, I get more money. So all these things have chipped away, and that's what's led us to where we are now. Not one incident, 7 decades.
Absolutely. I mean, there's some that say that culture is downstream from law, and you can definitely see in those sorts of policies that you're talking about there how that has been the case. When the law says you don't have to be the man of the house, you don't have to be the breadwinner, when the law says, oh, you don't even have to work if you're able to find an excuse for yourself to be on benefits and such, even if you don't necessarily would qualify for them otherwise, then yeah, people are going to take advantage of those opportunities. People, at the end of the day, they prefer leisure to work. And if you give them all the opportunity in the world to have as much leisure as they want, what are they going to do? They're going to take it.
They're going to take it. And what that does then is that starts degrading how they feel about themselves and the value they put on masculinity. So even when they decide, I want to do something, they haven't got the confidence, the skills anymore to be a real man, because they've allowed the state and the law and our community just to chip away so much from an empty vessel. They don't know what it is to be a man anymore. Our boys growing up now have no male role models. They can't even say I want to join the police or the army because they're men. No, look how woke and silly they are. There is no role models. And then, boys like to hang around with boys and learn from other boys. But every time we have a boys-only initiative or club, girls invade it like they did with the Boy Scouts, with cries of equality. So even boys can't be boys anymore because girls want to get in there, and that changes the whole dynamics. So we're not even teaching boys how to be men.
Very true. Sadly, it is all just true, everything that you're saying there, and hopefully something can change in the future, but I don't think it can really change until potentially we, get those sorts of laws and such that are struck down that are encouraging people to do these sorts of things. And that will take concerted effort to change the minds of the elites. And with Rishi and Liz in the run-up for Conservative Party leader, I don't see that changing anytime soon.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go over to lotuseaters.com to see all the premium content we have on our website, such as Harry's video on how the left remains an Ouroboros of wokeness and still manages to win. If you'd like to see the rest of the content that Harry's putting out, you can follow him on Getter at Harry Lotus Eater. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.